Yeah, I thought I did the entire screen, but apparently not. So, cool. So yeah, and today I'm going to be talking about day in the life of the sales engineer. Everybody thinks sales and they scream and run away, and you think of car salesmen, but I'm here to hopefully enlighten you and maybe entice you to the dark side because the dark side's fun. We have cookies, and I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. Darth Maul's my favorite Sith Lord, and Dark Anakin is amazing. So, disclaimer: all of these views expressed in this presentation are my own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever, which I have been, am now, or affiliated with. So this is simply my experience in the field, how I got here, and yeah. So let's dig into it. So again, like most of you have heard me talk, I started off actually at a help desk role, and I did that for as a student and then also a staff, where I essentially managed and maintained all the printers on campus. We had, the current person who was there left. He didn't want to maintain printers anymore, and I was like, "Cool, I'll take it over." And they're like, "Yeah, Corey, here, go manage, 500 printers across campus with 5 different print servers." And so I learned basically all of like a lot of my network experience came from that because I needed to figure out like how printers talk on the network, like how to set one up, how to secure them, because HP and all the other ones, when they ship them out, they just enable Telnet for no reason at all. So it's like, okay, great, like Telnet's a protocol that can be abused. Why is that on my printer? So once when I started there as a student, I graduated. I got my degree in business administration and management information systems, and then I worked there at help desk for about 4 years. And so from there, actually, it's kind of weird. That's how I got into security. Was I started asking my networking team questions and security team questions on, hey, like, why don't we secure our printers? Like, what's up with this? Because they essentially just gave me free reign. Like the sysadmin who was there, he's like, yeah, I don't want to deal with the print servers, so you can do all the migrations, you can do all the setup and everything else. And I was like, okay, cool. So I pretty much did that, and that's how I got into security and learned a lot of my networking and troubleshooting in general. And then I went back to school and got my master's in cybersecurity in 2017, and then uh, I ended up working as a senior security analyst at a fintech company, we originally started off with just two of us. I worked in for all of our North American business units. We had about three in the U.S., one in Canada, and then I worked with my colleague out of the U.K. And my job was to implement, basically standardize like our security across all of our different product groups, because we had one of our product groups which was very built out, or I'd say more built out than some of our other like infrastructure in product teams. And so the posture there, we tried to standardize everything. And I did SOC 2 auditing. I did one starting off with like one audit a year to like two or three audits, security audits a year for SOC 2. I even did an audit in the UK with my coworker for ISO 27001. So I have a lot of auditing experience and kind of like governance, risk, and compliance, building out security policies, but also, the head of our cloud engineering team was based in San Diego, and so I got to work very closely with our cloud engineers, and that's essentially where, I got a lot of my experience with cloud. And so, I worked with my cloud engineers to secure our cloud. I worked with our DevOps team to secure our code and the applications, introduce like change management policies and on how changes are being pushed, and essentially like anything and everything under the sun related to security. That was my job. And so in 2021, I ended up starting looking for new jobs, and that actually were where I became a sales engineer. It was kind of before that. I ended up applying for an auditing job because I thought that was like this is what I want to do. I want to be a freaking auditor. Like, this is going to be amazing, because I don't want to be that box checker that just goes in and just checks a bunch of freaking boxes, because compliance isn't security and security isn't compliance. And I thought this was my dream job. And when I got to the HR rep, she asked me like, what does AWS stand for? And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like, Amazon Web Services." And then we started talking, and I started talking about my experience, and she just said, "Oh, your master's basically doesn't mean shit. Excuse my language, but you need to have like a certification. Otherwise, we're not going to hire you." was like, wow, really? Like I've literally managed like an auditing program for 4 years. That doesn't count. She's like, no. I was like, okay. So during that time, that was very defeating, and I was a little bit upset with that. But I ended up going back and getting my CISSP certification, and I'm kind of glad that happened because I thought it was a big failure, but at the same time, when some people fail, for those of you who are just trying to break into the field, don't let failures define you. Or if you do let failures define you, do it in a good way. Like go out, kick ass. Like don't let people tell you no. And so this is where I went out 4 months later, got my CISSP certification, and now I work at my current job where I've worked for the last 2 years, and I'm a senior sales engineer now. So I actually started. So the purpose of this talk is to kind of go over like my background for what kind of got me into sales engineering, and then the experience that really helped me on the engineering side as well as the sales side. So today, I'm a senior sales engineer. I worked in the small and medium sized business, and there's different segments of sales engineering. So you have like small, medium-sized businesses, there's medium, large businesses, there's enterprise and strategic accounts, and just there's different sizes of teams that you can work with. And depending on who you're working with, there may be different people that you're talking to. So like usually in SMB, it's like a one-stop shop. There's just one person that does everything. Or maybe there's a few different people. They have like an IT team and a security team, and that's it. But I think the fun begins once we get into the large organizations where you're working with, hey, I'm talking to like a CIO, or I'm talking like a VP of IT and security. And so I essentially get to work with all these different people and persona. And that is what I think what makes sales engineering really fun, is that this is the reason why I think engineering and sales is interesting, because you get to work with people. And also it's very technical. So essentially on my calls, I basically just get to nerd out all day long about how cool our product is, and while also trying to help a client. So like some of the things on the sales side, I need to understand the client needs and listen and truly listen to them. I like to call it active listening. So, if you're listening to somebody and they have like a bunch of questions, and or I ask them a bunch of questions and they're giving an answer, I don't want to interrupt them, because half the time when somebody's like frustrated or they have an issue with like another vendor or another something, like they just want to be listened to. And those are like the communication skills that I've had to develop and build out, to really help your clients. You're essentially, I don't consider myself a sales engineer. I consider myself a security partner to help them do whatever they need. So that's kind of like the sales piece of it. The other piece of this is the engineering side, which is really fun because I constantly need to understand existing threats, understand how ransomware exploit works. I very much was defensive and more of like on a blue team at my last job, whereas my current job has forced me to, like I started studying for OSCP. I didn't take the exam and pass it because I was getting a little burned out with my job with how much I was having to learn every day. But I just learned a ton about the red team side and offensive security, and that actually helped me explain some very complex threats to clients that I work with. And so today, I get to demo threats and basically teach our technology to people. And I love teaching. Like it's so much fun. And so this is why like sales engineering is, I think, like it's funny because how I got my current job, the one of the managers, he said, I wish you would have like found this sooner, because now looking like 2 years later, like you're a badass at this. And I'm like, oh cool, thanks man. So it's fun. Like you get to learn a bunch of new concepts while also trying to help a client solve a problem. So, I've had to learn cloud infrastructure, AWS, GCP, Azure, Kubernetes, and containers. And, like Jesse did his talk today about Splunk attack, like a attack lab building. And that's awesome because that helps me, so that if a customer ever mentions something about Splunk attack path, it's like, oh yeah, I've seen that. So learning, if you love learning, sales engineering, could be for you. So this is the other piece of it. Very much when I first got into this job, uh, you know, it was a hey, car salesman slaps the roof of car, falls in the car. This bad boy has a sunroof. Like, so how I found out about this job was through networking. It was actually it's funny. It's a funny story, and I've told this before, but I got offered a job on Discord through the Black Hills Information Security Group. I saw somebody was posting at my current company, and they basically said, "Hey, we're hiring," and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in company X. You know, do you have just like 5-10 minutes of chat?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so I ended up chatting with this guy, and he had end up he was also like a security analyst for like 4 or 5 years, and then he converted over to sales engineering. And I was at the time I was looking for like a security engineer, a security analyst role, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do sales engineering." But I'm interested. I'm open just to like listen to chat with you, just to learn more about the company. And we chatted for about an hour, and we had a great connection. Like things were just super easy to talk with. He didn't seem like a slimy salesperson at all. Like you see sales and you immediately want to run away because nobody likes like slimy salespeople. Unfortunately, the field has a bad rap for that. But I ended up talking to him more and more, and then I actually turned it down the first time. I said, you know what, like I'll let you know if I'm interested. I'll think about it. But yeah, like I just want to keep in touch, and we'll go from there. A week later, I ended up working with a vendor at my current job. We were testing some pen testing solution. We were looking at like a new pen testing vendor, and they had some nice app and ways to like automate kind of the pen test. And we were looking at them, and they had a sales engineer jump on the line, and I saw what the sales engineer did. I'm like, are you serious? Like this is it? Like literally I just have to demo products with clients all day long and just nerd out about how cool our tech is. Like, okay, this is pretty dope. I'm kind of interested. And so I ended up going back to that manager and said, "Hey, I'm interested." And then 7 weeks later, after like 7 interviews, and I basically had to hack a Windows 10 box and build out my own lab from scratch, find a Windows 10 exploit, escalate my privilege to admin, and then own the box. And I had to basically walk through this in an hour with like one of my current directors, a manager, and a few other sales engineers on the line. So I mean, it was a lot. And so that's essentially how I got into sales engineering. And since then, it's been a trip. Like in the last 2 years, I've learned so much about cloud, like logging, all sorts of stuff. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to just kind of like give you like an overview of how I got into the position and why I just really enjoy this now. So like I am open about salaries. I think more people should talk about salaries in the engineering and security field because that way it helps you stay competitive and it helps you get paid. I think everybody should make $254,000 a year, like dead stop. If you're good at your job, hell yeah, let's go. And so I wanted to show you kind of the differences between like the inside sales engineer versus field sales engineer because it's hard to figure out. It really is hard to figure out what the average salary is, and there's a reason why it varies. And this is also why I think sales engineers are the magical unicorns, is because they have the people skills as well as like the technical engineering skills. And so when I look at myself in the mirror, I see unicorn like a badass unicorn. I just love this meme, and I just decided to throw it in there. But so there's different types of sales engineering positions. There is the inside sales or corporate sales, and then there's the field sales engineers. The reason why these salaries are different is because inside sales usually work. It depends on where you're starting. Like if you're starting in small, medium-sized businesses, or you're starting working with medium, large, or usually you're on like working with enterprise accounts. The salaries can vary. So you do make 75% of your salary as a baseline, and then however much your team it depends on if it's a team effort or individual effort, you can make up to 78,000 is maybe your base, and then if you get paid like 115 or 125, you can make up to 125, and then you can potentially make up more. So you can make maybe 160 a year. So those are inside corporate sales. They usually don't travel. There's a lot of remote positions that you can do, but then there's also field sales engineers, and these are kind of like the traveling sales engineers where they have to go on site. They work with like Department of Defense, or they work with defense contractors, and they usually have to travel like quite a bit. Like you may be at a different place every week, or maybe you're only in a certain territory. Like one of my friends works in New York, and that's the territories that he covers. And the salary can range. Usually for field sales engineers, it's a lot more, but you can have it range from like 100,000 to almost 254 to even $300,000. Like it's pretty crazy. So there's definitely money in sales. And then there's also pre-sales and post-sales. So that's another thing too. Like, do you want to work pre-sales? Pre-sales is when you work with, you've never talked to this person before. You have like a sales rep that you work with that'll go and they'll essentially they'll do like a discovery, it's called a sales discovery, to figure out if there's, what the issues are that this client's currently facing, what the needs are, like what they're looking for, and if they qualify the op, they meet like this specific set of criteria, they will, bring this client to you and you do a demo essentially. And so pre-sales is any like net new clients that you've never worked with before, and post-sales is clients that you've already worked with and maybe they have another issue but they don't have all of your products, and so then you explain that product's like, oh hey, we have your endpoint protection but maybe we need cloud like protection as well, like how can you help us? And so pre-sales is very different from post-sales in which that you have to build trust with the client first. So you're just like, it's like when you meet somebody the first time, you have to build trust with them before you just start, you know giving them all your money and stuff. And so post sales is that piece where the trust is usually already built out there, and then it's more of like the, hey, what's your consultant, like what are your issues, what are your projects for the year, where can we help? And so that's what I think is really really fun about like pre-sales and post-sales. I did pre-sales previously when I was in the SMB space, but now I'm on the senior space and I work with a lot larger enterprise accounts, and so I do both of them. And it's basically any clients that I sell to, I get to keep them now, and so I get to build up a relationship with all of my clients, and it's been fun to keep that experience going because you're essentially their security partner. And so this one, this kind of gets into, we're getting more into the day to day. So I've given you some of the background, I've given you some of like my experience, but now this is the interesting piece with sales engineers. You have a partner in crime, and this is your account executive. Account executives are usually the sales reps that you work with, and they're the ones that have to do all the heavy lifting of sales. They have to, find new opportunities, new clients to work with. They have to vet the opportunity to make sure like a client, like basically meets the discovery criteria to say like, hey, you know what, like they have budget for this purchase, they have, the timeline is on track, they have we're talking to this person who can actually make the buying decision. They have to understand the process of how like tech tools are purchased. They basically have to do all the salesy crap that I don't want to do. I mean, in order for me to be a good sales engineer, I still have to know this process and learn it. And it does take time, but they basically get to do all the salesy work, and you get to come on and be like Batman or Spider-Man, your friendly neighborhood sales engineer, and basically run the demo. It's funny because I've been on a call with a client and they straight up hated my account executive. They This op was a little bit difficult in the fact that they came to us like 6 or 8 months ago and then they decided not to purchase, and so then they came back and like, we want to purchase, and we don't want to go through all this sales crap, we just want a demo, and if you don't give us a demo, I'm leaving. And the guy straight up said this, and so I said, hey, well, like my name's Corey, here's all my experience, I used to be in your shoes, I used to be a security analyst, so I was building like rapport with this vendor. And it's funny. He's like, "Oh, Corey, it sounds like you have a lot of experience." I'm like, "Yeah, I do. Like, I used to be a security analyst." He's like, "Oh, well, we're actually hiring if you want to join our security team," like on the spot. And my account executive then started slacking me, like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like, I'm very upset." Like, blah blah blah. He was joking, of course, and he even messaged my boss, like, "Are you freaking kidding me? This is just like ridiculous." And we ended up like winning that opportunity. But I mean, it's funny because usually if you can build rapport with your clients and show them your experience, and if you have like a security engineering background, like sales engineering may be for you because you've been through, like you've dealt with dealing with vendors, and sometimes it's not fun. So your partner in crime is really your account executive, and sometimes you have issues with account executives, like they may not be willingness to change their process. If they tell something wrong on like a demo, they may if they tell you something wrong on a demo, like you have to correct them, and that is expected of you. And so this is really where the sales engineering piece comes into place, is that there's no BS from like the sales side. And apologies, give me 1 second. My cat's like freaking out. I gotta go let him in. So hold on, I'll let him out 1 sec. She's being a fatty. She wants food. And I'm back. Um, but yeah, so really like this is the unique thing I think being a sales engineer is your account executive is very much, it's a symbiotic relationship that you have to have with them. You have to they have to schedule things around you. If they book over your lunch, you got to tell them no. And so there's certain things that you have to build rapport, not just with the client, but you have to build out that relationship with your account executives. And there are some good account executives, and there's some bad account executives. And the ones who are willing to learn from you, and you can learn from them. Those are the best ones. The ones that don't want to learn and they're kind of stuck in their ways, it's going to make it harder to work with, and it's going to make harder at the end of the day to essentially make a sale. And so this is why I think like sales engineers are very unique because they have the symbiotic relationship with account executives, and so and also they have to have that relationship with the customer and build rapport there. And being the engineer on the call, like you do have more. You usually have more like I call my SAEs out all the time. Like, yeah, I don't have to deal with quoting or I don't have to deal with this process because that's my account executive and I don't get to do that. Like, I don't have to do that. I could just do the fun techie parts and teach people. So that's really why I wanted to mention like account executives and working with them because I think it's very unique and I've never done this in any other position that I have to work with like a sales team like this. Um, so any questions so far?
It's funny, I was on Dice earlier and I literally saw like numerous sales jobs and I'm like, I don't want to do that, and now I'm seeing this and it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same way, and it's funny because the manager was all like, when I first talked to him on Discord, he's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to plant the sales engineer bug in your ear," and then the more I actually found out like what a sales engineer does, I started to get stoked for it. In the last 2 years, I've been in this position. I've been promoted twice, and I've created like a bunch of documentation and I've taught other sales engineers in my organization. I was actually like the eighth sales engineer there, and I basically just documented my experience from because I had all the technical experience. I had a lot of technical experience, but I didn't have the sales side, so I had to learn the sales side. And that also just takes time. And there are a few others on this call who are also sales engineers. I convinced them to come to the dark side as well, and yeah, I feel like they enjoy their job as well, and if they don't, they can let me know or speak up and just say, hey, yeah, no, it's terrible, or oh, hey, it's fun. Sales isn't for everybody, but I certainly like it. Um, and you can make money too. Like there's some good money to be made out there. Um, yeah.
Yeah, my
Any
old
other
cybersecurity
questions?
man. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go for it. Any other questions, comments?
I was just saying I know it's a good career path because my old cybersecurity manager and making buckos money, he does that. He does sales and security, and he's doing great. He's been working there for years. So same job, just different title. So I know it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing. Like, if you can get in, so I feel like my strong suit in my part of my selling process is telling people that I was a security engineer. I was a security analyst, security engineer, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm able to really relate to clients when they're saying like, "Oh yeah, this thing is crap over here," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've dealt with that tool. It sucks. Like, it was a pain." And so like, if you have that, I think if you become a security analyst first, and you work through some of those issues in a large growing organization. I mean, my previous company, we grew from 500 people to 2,000. We grew from a team of 2 to a team of 10 on the security team, and it was tough. Like we had a lot of projects. I probably had like 30, 40 projects to work on a year, and sometimes only get done 5 because they were just long, long projects. And so having that experience has definitely helped me in my role. And I've worked with sales engineers who don't have that security analyst experience, and you can still do it. You can still like learn the job and learn the process, but you may have to do a bit more digging and understanding like hey, I've never worked with this tool before. I'm gonna go have to like research it a little bit. So it's definitely possible. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's certainly like just helped me.
I, I have a comment. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a good kind of computer oriented historical TV drama called *Halt and Catch Fire*. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's like 4 seasons long. It was produced on AMC. And but in the very first season, you got this guy who was this badass hardware engineer, and he ends up working, back in the 8-bit days as a sales engineer. And this other guy comes in, kind of as as the account executive, whatever. And it's such a good show. I mean, just in and of itself. But basically, you see this guy starting off as a sales engineer, and basically the guy who comes in is this total, loose cannon guy who convinces him to help him reverse engineer the original IBM PC BIOS. It's a really good show. So if you're, it's a similar kind of track, but it's not cybersecurity related, but it's just a fantastic show. And so I highly recommend it. *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds pretty interesting. Thanks, Warlock. But yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll jump into it. Cool. So this is the sales process, and I'll be honest with you, I was not that great at the sales side when I first started. I just didn't understand it. There's a lot of objection handling that you have to learn. There's, if you have a pissed off client, how do you de-escalate the situation? I've learned a lot of these tools for de-escalation because I have a very, very heavy influence with my brother. Everybody who knows me in person, we're very close. We have the same tattoos, but we've very much taken different career choices. He's a middle school teacher for behavioral kids. So he works with kids who have these crazy like trauma experiences. Oh, it looks like my screen for my monitor went out. He works with these kids that have like crazy trauma experiences in the past, and he tries to help them, like, just get better and work through some of those issues that they have. And so he's very good at de-escalation, and de-escalating like tricky, difficult situations. So I've been able to learn some of the stuff even throughout college and everything, because he was a psychology and communications major, and he went the teaching route, and I went the security and IT route. And so it's interesting working, a difficult deal and trying to understand, what the issues are. And a lot of the times it comes down to like a sales process, or what is their actual issue at hand. And so one of the things that's really helpful, I think, in the biggest piece that could just make your life easier, is the importance of discovery. And what that means is, the account executive usually is supposed to go out and gather discovery information. So if I'm going into any new company, the first thing I ask is, how many endpoints are we working with? What operating system split are you working with? Linux, Mac, Windows. What tools are you using today? What issues are you facing? Like, what do you wish your tools could do, and can we help you with them? And so, and if I'm working with a cloud, I work a lot with Kubernetes and containers environments. And so cloud is a whole different experience, because there's AWS, there's GCP, Azure, there's Elastic Container Service in AWS, there's Azure container, or sorry, yeah, there's Elastic Container Service, which is ECS in AWS. There's Elastic Kubernetes Service, or EKS, and then you have all these different infrastructure setups. Like if you have, Kubernetes running on EC2 instances, or if you have Kubernetes running on just Fargate, which is AWS managing the underlying EC2. So there's all these different questions that I have to understand from a technical standpoint, of not only just what their infrastructure is, but also what issues they're facing today, um, and just other questions or other things that I have to find out. And so some of the things on the sales process that you have to find, it's called MEDDPICC, and it's always spelled differently. This is actually the MEDDPICC. So this is, again, like learning the sales process. You need to understand like the metrics. You need to figure out like who the economic buyer is. So who has like buying capabilities? What is their decision criteria that'll make the deal close? What is their decision process? How does the payment process work? So how do they onboard new vendors? I hate this identify pain. I really don't like this from like a tech perspective, and becoming like, because it sounds like you have to like bring up pain in their life and make their life miserable in order to sell to them, but that's not what I think it is. Pain is just essentially like, what issues are they currently having, and what do they wish maybe their tools are lacking, and where can you help with there? That is how I see it. And then there's champions, who loves, maybe somebody's used your tool previously and they really love it. So do you have any champions that are pushing for you, where maybe the board is like, oh no, we want this other competitor because it looks like it's cheaper, but it may take a lot more time to implement. And there's essentially what's the, oh man, I can't think of the word right now. There's tangible and intangible costs that essentially are associated. Tangible is dollars and cents, it's numbers, whereas intangible is time. Like how much time does it take for somebody to implement this tool? And then also who's the competition? Like what other vendors are they looking at? And so this is really like the purpose of value selling is, hey, sell the value of the product, how it can make the client's life easier. And then you need to understand who you're talking to. Because if I'm in a room getting super technical and nerding out in front of a bunch of CEOs and CIOs who may not be extremely technical, I'm doing the wrong thing. Like you have to speak their language. If I'm going into opportunity that has cloud engineers on it, and they're very, very cloud heavy, they speak their own language. If you're working with a DevOps team, they speak their own language. Like you have to understand the the different naming conventions and just words that DevOps people use, or like cloud engineers use, or those crazy Linux admins use, in order to make sure you're not looking like an idiot on the call. And so that's why I put this liar gif in there, because some people think salespeople are just a bunch of liars, and I love this scene with Anakin and he yells out liar. So, but yeah, so this is just like an intro into like the sales process. And the other piece of this is it takes time. It takes time to learn this process. It is something completely new that I'm not a patient person, and for those that have worked with me, they know I'm really not like a patient person. I want to see success immediately, and this was the toughest thing because I didn't see success immediately, and I had to really work for this to understand the sales process, to understand to how to de-escalate situations, to understand if somebody asks me like a difficult question, or like a landmine where they're trying to trap me in a certain position that isn't healthy, and or it just doesn't make sense to be in that position. you know you have to, it's like a game of chess. Like you constantly have to know what questions the clients are going to ask, and then how to respond to those questions professionally. And if they're if you maybe misunderstand a certain question, and you're not understanding the main use case with them, half the time clients will ask a question and they don't even know what they want. And so they'll ask a question. I need to follow up with a clarifying question to say like, hey, like, what do you mean by this use case? Can you clarify for that? And if they clarify that, and you start to get to the deeper issue of that, then you can really start to dig into their issue, because I don't want to spend time troubleshooting like something that I don't understand and just like spit an answer out to them. That's not, you don't make, you don't move forward that way. And so there's a lot of like just it just takes time. One of my VPs told me it takes about a year for me to not just learn all the different products and modules that we have, but also learn the sales side. And it took me about a year, and I think it was like about 8 months I started feeling comfortable, and then 12 months is like, all right, I feel pretty comfortable in this. I'm confident. So building confidence. So this is really like the sales process that you work with an account executive. You don't have to know this, but I think if you do know it, it's helpful, because you have to understand what opportunities are out there. Time is money, money is power, power is pizza, and everybody wants more pizza at the end of the day. And so this is really where uh, you discover a good opportunity. You identify the contact, the key people. You have a good discovery process and ask a lot of questions to figure out what are their pains, where do they need help. You show value in your tool for where you can help them, where you can save time, whether it's money or the tangible costs like money, or if it's just time, like you'll save them time from having to manage a specific tool. And then usually the AE deals with like the negotiation contracts. They deal with like, is it a win or a loss, and they have to help with that. And then yeah, that's pretty much, this was the closest thing I could find for kind of like just a general sales process that goes through that. And then as far as like my day to day goes, I have a lot of technical demos with different clients. I thought it would be the same every single day, and this was my biggest fear was, hey, I'm going to lose my technical edge. That is not true. I've gained so much knowledge from the technical standpoint from working at my job because there's a lot of technical people that are around me. I get to talk to like, Kubernetes engineers who are like tier 3 engineers and they live, eat, and sleep Kubernetes. And I get to work with them and troubleshoot ops with them on calls. So I get to work with a lot of different teams, and so like technical demos, like I'll have a technical demo with one client, and then I'll have another demo back to back, and it'll be completely different client, completely different set of infrastructure, completely different set of issues. And so my day consists of being on a lot of technical demos, but each and every one of them is unique and faces different challenges, and it is kind of like a chess game of trying to figure out like how to what's the best way to move forward and help this client. I get to do a lot of proof of concepts or proof of values where we spin up an environment and I get to launch malware off in a lab and test and show detections and show how like our tool works. And then also I get to be a security partner. Like my goal at the end of the day is to understand their initiatives, review problems that they're facing, and in general help them. So although my title is sales engineer, I don't like that title at all. And I say this on calls. Like, I hate to, like, I came to the dark side of sales. I don't like sales in my title. I wish it was just engineer or solutions engineer, but it is sales. And so, my goal at the end of the day is just to help them. And so, as far as the day in the life of the SE, we're really looking at demos. I'm attending a lot of product and roadmap calls, so a lot of learning, new features, and then also, looking at technical enablement, new types of attacks like 3CX happen. That was a software or a download compromise on their site, and they had a huge issue. They were targeted by a nation state, like a North Korean nation state, and like I have to learn about this stuff, and because it's in security, so security sales engineers, you have to learn about the latest attacks because clients are going to ask you about them. And then I've had to learn a lot of cloud, Active Directory, logging, Kubernetes. Like the list never ends here. So I consider myself kind of more of a jack of all trades versus one specific thing that I specialize in. And I think that's what makes like the sales engineer unique, because again, you have to deal with clients, and then you also have to deal with your account executives, and then you have to deal with the engineering piece of it. And so that's why I think like essentially SEs are the magical unicorns, because a lot of engineers sometimes they don't want to talk to people, and that's okay. There's nothing against them. I've worked with some great engineers who are huge introverts, and they just don't want to talk to people. They just want to do their job and go home. And that's okay too. If that's maybe this isn't for you if that's the case, but that's fine. Everybody has their own thing. And so, as far as recommendations go, I promise I'm almost done. This is the Silver Bullet Selling by G.A. Bartik. This is a really good book. I've recommended it to every single SE I've worked with and helped ramp up. It just gives you a high level overview of the sales process, and it really helped me do a better discovery of what issues clients are facing in their infrastructure and what their needs are, and it just made my life easier in general. So I really recommend that. Never split the difference, even if you're not a sales engineer. This is The Art of Negotiation by Chris Voss. He used to work at the FBI, and he has a bunch of stories. And he basically went to, I think it was like Harvard or something, and he got like a business degree. And he basically talks about his experience in kind of like sales and like the sales class and the art of negotiating. And he has some like terrorist scenarios where he had like crazy kidnappers and things like that. But yeah, it's a really good book. And then the other piece, the last thing is practice, practice, practice. Like it really takes real life sales practice to be good at sales, and it just takes time. And that was the toughest thing that I really had to face. Was I had to get a lot of feedback from my teammates, a lot of feedback from different managers, some trial and error here and there, and just yeah, always looking to better perfect my craft. And that's it. That's pretty much my presentation. Anybody have any questions on this?
Are you hiring?
We are hiring. I think we do have some few sales engineering positions. I have to go look. Some of them might actually been filled, but yeah.